happening now. We want to welcome our viewers from across the United States and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room. Good morning, good morning, good day, good evening. This is EdTech Situation Room, episode number 336 on I'm sorry, 339 on November 2024. My name is Jason Neiffer, and I am the executive director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is the state virtual school located on the beautiful University of Montana campus located in fabulous Western Montana. But tonight, I am joining you from Chicago, where I spent the last 3 days at the Quality Matters Conference, which is a wonderful event. So glad to be able to be here with so many wonderful colleagues in both K-12 and higher ed across the United States. And I spoke on a panel yesterday about AI, and then this morning gave a presentation on using AI for content and course development. But hey, enough about me. Joining me tonight, as always, just one time zone away, which is a delight for me. Good evening, Dr. Wes Fryer.
Good evening, Jason. That's right. I forgot that you were going to be on the road and traveling. So I'm glad that, things with current events as they are have appeared to be relatively calm, and you've had a good time at the conference. I think I remember hearing things about that conference. Is this one you've been to before, or
I've done some of their online events before, but this is the first time that we attended the national conference. We've been to a couple of regional pieces, but it was great. A lot of interesting stuff going on, as I'm sure most people would imagine. AI is very much at the forefront of people's minds as we kind of talk about how we can think about or develop around or kind of evolve around these fast moving tools.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Wes Fryer. I am a middle school classroom teacher in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I am excited to be here. Apologies, we're slightly delayed today, and we just, had a rather erratic schedule. But hey, this is life. So, Jason and I get to hang out today and talk about tech for an hour, and that feels like a gift. So, I'm excited. We have just a few articles in the queue tonight. So what are we about to do, Dr. Neiffer?
Well, I believe that our goal is that we're going to take a look at some news. It's been kind of kicking around the tech arena, both in the United States and around the world. We're going to shoot it through kind of the education prism to see if we can't help provide some insight to our fellow tech enthusiasts across K-12 and higher education. And of course, you can check out all the links, the ones we talk about, and many, many more that we don't get to each week at our website, edtechsr.com. But tonight, we, as always, have some AI news. We will be talking everything, including model updates, platform integrations, deepfakes, dystopias, ethics, all sorts of exciting things. We may hit on some election tech, although if we happen to skip any election news, it's give me no skin off of my back tonight. Some copyright news. We did not have a show last week, which means we haven't had a chance to talk about the new Apple stuff that was released last week, and I did maybe pull the trigger on a new MacBook Pro. And we can talk about that. Some social media news, some Google news, our miscellaneous category. And at the end of tonight, we will talk about our Geeks of the Week. And both Dr. Fryer and I have some amazing things to share about some things that we're both involved in our regions related to EdTech. So, Dr. Fryer, where would you like us to begin tonight?
Well, I'd love for you to start with Apple, but I'm going to mention first, because this will take away from me having too many overshares for Geek of the Week. ChatGPT has a new feature, and this is the first time that I've tried it. If you are a paid user, or I don't know if they call it Teams or Business or what, you have chatgpt.com /? Hence equals search, and that puts a little box, and I'll drop the link in, puts a little search box in, and you are supposed to then be live searching the web. But I used a prompt to say, hey, I would like 20 recent articles having to do with educational technology. And then I even gave it some specific topics, and it did give a few new articles. And so a few of them that I have in here, I would not have been finding them on my typical Ars Technica 9 to 5 Google News searches like I usually do. But it was real frustrating because number one, it was giving me older articles, and then it usually will apologize. It'll be nice. It'll say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not doing this." It wouldn't do that, and it just kept on saying, "Oh, okay, well, here's this, and it's inclusive." And I kept on saying, "You're not doing this right," and then it finally said, "You're not even apologizing," and then it started to apologize. It's weird, right? When you've been using this tool and it has this behavior, and then it changes. And so there are so many different options, by the way, too. Now it's kind of confusing to me. I'm like, what the heck? They're all cryptic, and there's like five different options or so that you have in there. So anyway, there are a few articles that are in here that we would not have otherwise, but I think I'd just like to start with Apple because that sounds like a happy topic, Jason, and I'd love to have a happy topic to start with, because we can always go dystopian on everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always an opportunity to go dystopian. So, well, let's talk about the Apple releases last week, and they did something that I thought was really interesting. Instead of doing their kind of typical big event, which as in the last couple of years certainly deferred more to video releases than it has live events. Although oftentimes they will have a live audience sitting at the Steve Jobs Theater on the new Apple campus in California, in part because it's an opportunity for their team to celebrate when they release new stuff. But a couple weeks back, they released a new iPad mini, which a lot of people said was kind of a yawn. It really, they just updated it. They didn't update the form factor. They didn't update any of the true features, other than it has a newer chip, which is compatible with Apple Intelligence. So it kind of makes it more equivalent to like an iPhone 16 as opposed to an iPhone 12 or 13. But they also, I'm not sure if they even announced this. I think it just leaked that they were going to have 3 days of press releases to talk about, the release of new hardware. And sure enough, they released new hardware. 3 days last week, they had brand new stuff that they released on successive days last week. So among this, and probably the most important piece of all this, is actually maybe no, actually they're all three important now that I think about it. On Monday was the new Mac Mini. The Mac Mini has gone from being kind of a larger small machine to now something that looks like it's a slightly thicker Apple TV, much smaller than its previous generations, and despite that, packs in some extraordinary guts inside of it. And there's so many interesting things about the choices they made here, but not the least of which is it gets the new M4 chip. You can also upgrade to an M4 Pro chip on the Mac Mini. And the minimum amount of RAM available now on a Mac Mini is 16 megabytes, which means that you can spend $599 for an M4 chip, which apparently absolutely dominates M1, M2, and M3 chips, and also has 16 gigabytes of RAM for $600, which is just an incredible value. So far, I've seen some reviews. The chips seem very fast. The only kind of weird thing about the new Mac Mini is that the power button is on the bottom of the device, and you have to kind of lift it a little bit. You have to kind of stick your finger under there to be able to turn the device on. But I do have a Mac Mini M1 at home that I did upgrade to 16 gigabytes of RAM. I do have a friend that's probably going to upgrade just to get to the new M4 chip, and he said that the trade-in price for the M1 Mac Mini with 16 gigabytes is only $250. At that price, I'd rather just turn it into a server, to be honest, but or kind of a play box. But that suggests I'm upgrading, which I'm not yet. But yeah, really, really, really great looking hardware. So I guess I'll stop there. Any thoughts about the new Mac Mini?
Well, we don't usually do this, but I went ahead because you'd put the link into the Apple website and shared the screen, and it is a pretty phenomenal web page. In fact, I think I'm going to share this with my web design kids next week. We've got conferences the next 2 days, but wow, just some great photography and animations and things like that, touting the power of it. So I'm still sporting this 27-inch iMac that I just connect my screen to. But golly, the speed of this. And then you have been playing with the Apple Intelligence,
Yeah.
and one of the things I saw on the homepage is to watch the film. There's like a 4 or 5 minute film. You think it's really worth it? I guess. I mean, you've commented, I think, in the recent past about being impressed. And of course, it's interesting. Apple's, well, now I'm shifting to Apple Intelligence, but this is a reason to think about it. AI for the rest of us is their catch line. It's cool. It's powerful. It's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's subtle, which is the part that I think is so interesting about Apple's approach. And I do have an article about the 18.2 iOS developer beta has now been released, which means some of the fancier things like the image generators and the direct ChatGPT integration is now available. We can talk about that separately in a bit, but I have my iMac or my iMac. I have my MacBook Air that is my primary machine that I carry around with me. And, I do usually have ChatGPT or Claude up throughout the day to help me with brainstorming or to smooth over writing. Well, now that's all just integrated right into the interface. And so being able to just right click and open up writing tools and select a text and have it proofread or rewrite or change the tone on it is really convenient. It means that I'm much more likely to go to a tool. Now that said, you can download 24 different Chrome extensions that allow you to plug in a ChatGPT API key that will do something very similar. But the fact is that it's just neatly integrated into the system, not unlike what Google is trying to do in Chrome OS with Google Gemini. But yeah, I think it is really worth it. And and I'll just mention the iMac here too, because it's kind of a different deal. The iMac also got the upgrades as well, and now you can buy an iMac with an M4 chip in it. I believe the minimum amount of RAM there too is 16 gigabytes. And in light of the beautiful screen and the cost of $1,300 for the minimum iMac, I think that's a pretty great deal for what you're getting.
That Mac Mini, though, I mean, is as large of a screen as you can get for a cheap cost. And then when you think about upgrades, again, like I've loved this big 27-inch iMac. Full disclosure, I bought this for my school when I left my last school. This was the inherited machine I had from the previous tech director, and I just loved it. It's huge. It's a beautiful, beautiful screen. But you can get beautiful screens for not too much change these days. And the idea of then, just replacing out the device you're plugging in, I got to say that really does appeal to me. And having access to these AI powers, especially with the updated Siri. I mean, that's the thing I've been yearning for, right? Is for
Yeah.
Google Assistant and for Siri to be as good as ChatGPT. And I do enjoy talking to ChatGPT and probably will continue to do that through the app. It's kind of weird. I don't know if you do that run this, but you can't share a conversation that you have used your voice in. If
Yeah.
you type into it, it's fine, but it will not create a shared link for one that you have used your voice, which I think is interesting. And I don't know exactly why that is. And then if you've also uploaded custom images, it won't
Yeah.
create that either. So you have to, copy and paste and make your own Google Doc version.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not really in the market for a lot of new hardware right now financially, but I got to say that that Mac Mini really has my attention. And I don't know. I don't think I think I have a 13 and I think I'm too old to be able to be with, using the Apple Intelligence with my phone. So,
Yeah. Well, and I will say that then the third set of hardware is new MacBook Pros, and it's interesting because this has always been kind of true, but it's very much true with this generation of MacBook Pros with M4 chips in them. There are two chips available. There's the M4 and M4 Pro. The M4 Pro, both the M4 and the M4 Pro come with different numbers of cores, so they really have a variety of different options available. And so I went with kind of a middle option MacBook Pro 14 with a M4 Pro chip in it, and then I did get as much RAM as I could afford, which was 48 gigabytes. And the now
48.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was 24 or 48 was, or I could go up to 64, but that was ridiculously priced. And I cobbled together between trading in this MacBook Air M1, which I'm gonna sell back to Apple for, I think it's like $375, and then one of my credit cards I'd been building some value on for a long time in points, and so I converted it to an Apple gift certificate. And so my price was well under $1,000 for it. So, and my calculus is that I'd like to try to keep that for 4 years before I upgrade again. But part of it is that I am running out of, like, I'm regularly running into capacity issues with the 8 gigabytes on board of RAM on my MacBook Air. And since this is my primary machine when I'm on the road, and I'm on the road quite a bit, it was getting to the point where I would have to do a twice daily restart. And I know Chrome is a bit of a RAM hog, but the bottom line is that I'm not in the position to switch browsers anytime soon. So Chrome it is, and so for me that it has to be a part of my calculus. So and it's got on the model I picked the new Thunderbolt 5. So what I'm gonna try to do is see if I can't. The Thunderbolt 5 docks are ridiculously expensive right now. So I found a used Thunderbolt 4 dock. Right now I'm using a Thunderbolt 3 dock. 4 is only slightly better, but the one I found on eBay was like a third of the price new. It was it was used and in great condition. So I might stick that under my desk at work, so that when I want to use my personal machine and not one on the work grid, then I can just plug into the dock under the desk and be able to control that. But yeah, super interesting. I think how this is all played out. And I think these machines are awesome, and I think the value premise is very much there with all these machines. The fact that you can buy a $600 Mac Mini with an M4 chip and 16 gigabytes of RAM, that's a good value. And my guesses would be, well, I'm using the M1 version of that as my home desktop, and I don't anticipate upgrading. I have 3 monitors plugged into that thing, and several Neiffer toys, and it's humming along just fine on the newest version of Mac OS 10. So yeah, I great upgrades. Really interesting that they didn't promote them with anything more than a press release and a couple of short videos. But I feel like Apple continues to hum along, providing pretty great value. Still premiumly priced, but the fact that after discounts, I bought this Mac Mini 2.5 years ago. I paid for it because it was on sale, and then I did trade in an Apple TV. They gave me like $80, and I think I had some Amazon coupons or something. But I got this thing for $600. I'm going to sell it back for $375. That means that I rented this, for $225 for the last 2 years. So
Wow.
that's the thing about Apple stuff, right? It keeps its value in a way that almost no other device does.
Well, on a good note, here we are, folks, back to the Apple fanboy love. Those of you that have just thought we descended into the AI only world. Yeah, of course, we're talking about Apple Intelligence, but yeah, we'll get back there. The other thought that I have is that I'm going to use the Apple website for sure to show my kids. Wow. I don't know if y'all have noticed this, but many websites have gone to this sort of almost infinite scroll mode where there's not a lot of clicking, but it all's on that same page. You just have to keep on scrolling. And even if you click, that usually will take you down to a target that's lower on the page. And so anyway, that I had not taken time to explore those, and it's just beautiful web pages, beautiful products. Apple, as I mentioned before, when they do events, tend to really set a high bar for digital storytelling and visual communication. They're definitely setting a good standard here for web pages. So as a middle school web design teacher, I've got an eye for that, and that was awesome on its face too. Here's an Apple article. There's no way I would have found without AI, because this is not going to be in a source that I usually look at. This is one that is from the last 2 weeks, and it comes from Ireland. So it's from the Irish Times on Halloween, October 31st. Schools issue prom warning to pupils over missing iPad. And so the article talks about how schools in Glasgow, really for COVID, provided thousands, more than 80,000 iPads for students, handed out free of charge. And it's estimated that more than 10,000 have not been on their network for more than a year. They also say that they have them configured where they only work on the basically school's network. And they had some kind of tracking devices. But anyway, there's just a lot of controversy, and a lot of these devices have seriously walked away. And that's interesting. I have been connected and known some large U.S. school districts that have had some iPad contracts, and the tendency that I've seen is more, movement towards Chromebooks and less expensive devices. But I thought that was pretty interesting, and they're trying to leverage the opportunity to go to their prom. And in terms of their language too, it said something about, let's see if I can find this word, disco. Yes. Highland secondaries among senior schools, which have refused to let final year pupils attend their leaving disco or collect leavers hoodies unless they hand back their devices, city councilors have been told. So I think there's a little language of Ireland there. I don't think we would be necessarily talking about the leaving disco, but that I think refers to the culminating dance celebration party that students would be able to do. So you got to hand back your iPad if you're in Glasgow. Otherwise, you may not get to come to the dance. There you go.
Yeah, and then I will say one more thing about that article about the new iOS 18.2 that's rolled out. I really shouldn't be doing this because I use my phone so much for health stuff, but I did install the developer beta, and there's just two things I want to note. The first one is it does have the I can't remember the name of the app now, but it's the new image generator that comes as an app on your phone. It is called, Jason is having problems remembering what it is called and can't find it on his home
Image
screen.
Playground?
It is Image Playground, and unfortunately, I did request access the moment I got it, but I keep getting this screen, early access requested, and it's not been granted to me yet. So I did read an article on the plane on the way here that they are rolling out really slowly, in part because they would like more regular users to play with it to make sure that it doesn't have weird output, or think about the number of times we reported in the last 2 years how an image generator has created weird crap. So I think that that's part of their strategy here. The other thing that's also interesting is that there is direct ChatGPT integration into the device now. And in fact, under the Apple Intelligence menu, there is, under settings, there is a ChatGPT section now. It's called Extend Apple Intelligence Siri with ChatGPT is one of the options. And I signed into my paid account because I have a paid ChatGPT account. And with Siri, occasionally it will ask me, and I think I can ask it. I think I got that to work or work this week. Ask ChatGPT X, right? But it will then use the pro version of it instead of the free version, which it would do without you logging into it at all. But interesting so far. I wish there was a little more to do with it. Because it just seems like Siri will ask that, but I am still running into the same bizarre Siri stuff that I think makes the platform less stable. Where I will ask for it to start a timer on my phone, it will answer back with one of my Apple smart speakers, which is not what I wanted. Or when I'm driving, it will tell me it can't do that in the car, even if I'm a passenger. And there's no way to make a passenger mode. That happened to me on public transportation a couple weeks ago, which I just thought was really bizarre. That wouldn't let me talk to Siri while sitting on a train back and forth from the airport
because it thought you were in a car, maybe, and driving.
Yeah, and So yeah, and also Siri is clearly less functional than it was just 2 or 3 years ago. They've taken so many features away, but I do think that the conversation back and forth with Siri's improved under iOS 18. That's really noticeable to me. And I do love the things like the Apple Mail mail summaries and the notification summaries that appear on the notification shade. But yeah, that's marching along.
Wow. I'll be real interested, since you've got the Apple speakers as well, what you're liking and function, everything. I really use my iPhone now, like a smart speaker, getting ready in the morning
Yeah.
because, I can talk to Siri and, get, songs and well, pardon me, more often podcasts, to play or to pause. And, um, yeah, I mean, I like having my podcast with me, and my phone is with me almost all the time. So I I really am hopeful that Google is going to do some kind of an update, right? I've got a number of Google, smart home devices that we've invested in, and I definitely, love the Spotify speakers. But one thing we never talked about as an article update, but Google had a lawsuit with what was the other smart speaker company over like the room streaming because they had evidently violated
Oh,
copyright.
Sonos, right?
Sonos, yeah, and that just got settled because that it works again. So the created merged speakers I have. We're Lord of the Rings people, so I have Rohan as my entire house, so I can say play this on Rohan, and anyway, that'll just play on all whatever 5 speakers we have. But I really hope that we're going to see some updates. So kudos to Apple for, I guess, acknowledging the industry leading performance of OpenAI's ChatGPT, and not just insisting on, hey, you've got to use something that's a lot worse, that we're trying to make. I think it's fantastic that they've integrated it. Um, so hopefully we're going to see other similar kinds of progress with our smart assistants. But the last things, and I haven't exhaustively researched this, but the last things I'd read had indicated, Google had cut their smart speaker and Google Assistant teams quite a bit. And I think they've shifted people, over to Gemini, but time will tell. We'll see. Google's notorious for not necessarily always following through with every product line and team and everything like that they have. So I have been looking on Facebook Marketplace incidentally for some Google Home smart speakers, and I don't know if it's the original. I invested in a lot of the minis. I've got one of the displays in our kitchen, and then I've got these other just minis. But I have seen for like $25-$30, something like that, some of the larger Google speakers that have a higher quality and everything like that. And I know that's one of the things you like about Apple speakers is they've got some pretty phenomenal quality for enjoying your music and your podcasts and all that stuff.
Yeah, and it's sometimes even kind of little silly things, but we do have one of the home pods. We redid our kitchen 2 years ago, and my wife and I decided that the best way that we really wanted a nice speaker for the kitchen to go with our nice brand new kitchen. So we did buy one of the big bulky, no, bulky is not the right word. It's just thick speakers. The HomePod, I believe is what it's called, or maybe a HomePod Pro. But we bought it, and it's great, but it has this really cool feature that, if you're listening to a podcast on your phone, you walk up to the speaker, you tap it on top, and it just starts playing on your speaker. Nothing to press, no buttons to push, no settings. It just does it. And my wife, who spends a lot of time listening to things on her phone, she doesn't use her phone all that much. She listens to stuff all the time on her phone, podcasts and music and sometimes white noise. And all she needs to do, and she's running around the house in her AirPods, and she just wants to start cooking dinner and wants it on the speaker, just taps on the phone, and it moves them from the AirPods to the speaker. And that's pretty cool stuff. And we've talked about this dozens of times in the past, but ecosystem is a real advantage for Apple. And unfortunately for Microsoft, the number two ecosystem is Microsoft. It's Google. Google stuff works really well together, as it turns out. If you have a Chromebook and a Pixel phone and Pixel Buds, those things all work pretty well together too with all of the Google stuff. So that continues to be an extraordinary advantage for the good folks at Apple.
Yeah, definitely. Side question, because I'm just navigating this on their website. Have you played with Apple Vision Pro yet? Have you the VR? Have you?
I know a half dozen folks or so that have done the demo. That's a fitting and a demo you can do at an Apple store. I just haven't had a chance to do it yet.
Yeah, I haven't either. So that's something. It's I mean, at that price point, it's not going to be something on
No,
my list soon. So
no.
okay, well, where should we go now? We've actually exhausted all of the Apple articles. So
Wow. So
um,
fanboy hour is over. Let's talk about social media for a couple minutes.
sounds good.
So I think no. Why don't we do your article first about the TikTok challenges?
Yeah. Okay. Here's another article. It's not a complete, fail for ChatGPT, because this was. Well, no, this wasn't. This is an Ars Technica. Uh, there were a few articles that ChatGPT found. I always tend to look at Ars Technica before we do a show. So this is a article from today, November 6th, and the headline is "For Fame or a Death Wish: Kids TikTok Challenge Injuries Stump Psychiatrists," and it references a recent JAMA Psychiatry uh, published article from the University of Tennessee Health Science Center. And they are two psychiatrists who authored this, raising the alarm about the dangers and complexities of TikTok challenges. And one of the things they're saying is it's an emerging health concern for kids because it really blurs the line between an unintentional injury. Oh, they were just trying to, do some silly, TikTok challenge, or actual suicide attempts that children and teens are engaging in. And so, I think that, of course, well, I say, of course, the satanic panics of the 80s and these other times, there have certainly been all sorts of hand wringing that, adults have done. In my parents' generation, it was Elvis. And, there's always been things where adults have been out of shape over this younger generation. But I mean, there are situations that deserve some real attention, and when it comes to injury and death, that seems to cross a line. So I think that there's real concerns. We have had schools that we've talked about on the show before that have had to deal with TikTok challenges when they involved vandalism and things like that in schools, and kids were being challenged to video things and put them on TikTok. This seems, and I've heard. I haven't researched deeply into this, but I've definitely heard about these things, where they're recommending kids eat things that are horrible and poisonous, do things that can lead to asphyxiation and death. And so I think that this is something that deserves concern. And there is another article actually that I will mention on the social media. I think I put this one on from the AP that was pretty good. Nope, I didn't. I'll have to go grab it. Maybe I put it under AI. But anyway, yeah, this was just saying we're blurring the lines, and we need to be really concerned about it. And parents need to be concerned and engaged about
it. And I mean, I'm obviously quite reflective in the last 2 weeks in the middle of this election cycle, and my hair is really something special tonight. I've been thinking about my own engagement with tech, and I suffer. I'm not sure if that's the right word. If you looked at a clinical definition of adult ADHD, I think I probably would qualify under that. And so I've been reading some books, mostly aimed at practitioners, because I'm a little bit in this space to just to think about some of the ways that I may want to change some of my habits. And I've on and off done things like skipped out on social media for a while, or turned off this or that on my phone, or didn't sleep with my phone. Well, I'm back to that kind of cycle again. But I'm really thinking that there's just a couple apps that one of them was specifically called out on or in a book I was reading a couple weeks ago about the quick dopamine rush you get from things like TikTok, and I think it's contributing to my to some of my struggle to get through certain tasks during the time that I need to get them through. And so I'm taking that very proactive action to delete some apps off my phone, to strictly set limits on a couple of them, using I'm kind of parental controlling myself, basically, to be able to limit my things on a phone. But I think of it in terms a lot about my parents, because my parents, my dad turned 80 this year. My mom is 74, and we've tried television alternatives for them other than cable, but they don't like Hulu and they don't like Netflix. And they're like, well, what time is the show on? And like, can we DVR it? I mean, they're into that. But in a lot of cases, they just want to watch, their show on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. and call it a day. And the phone is just such an extraordinary device, because you can watch any movie you want to, you can listen to any music you want to, you can read anything you want to. If you want to explore things that are perhaps less socially accepted to talk about on a family friendly podcast, you can access that anywhere, anytime, any place, 24/7. And it relates to the article that I want to share that was related to that. Um, that this is from Vox, and I believe this is based on some Harvard data, but they were talking about the anxiety that grade tracking apps do, and or create for students. And I remember having this conversation with my principal. This was 15 years ago, so this is pre big smartphone era, and it was the first time they were going to turn on the parent portal in our LMS, or not our LMS, but our student information system in our district. And I told him that, to be really honest, I mean, I think it's a bad idea. I think there's already enough pressure on teachers to get grades out really quickly. And I said, I don't mind that parents have access to this stuff, but I said, if I'm giving a test on Friday, I'm not going to have that graded before Sunday, right? That's just not the way it goes. And I think I think it puts unhealthy pressure on the educational environment. And I guess I never really thought about it, but it's really bad. It's really problematic, I should say, not bad, but because I think parents have the right to see that data, but it is, I think, another factor. We have access to all data everywhere, anytime, any place, 24/7, and it's just a lot. And especially for students that have anxiety about their grades, I think about some of our twice exceptional students that are identified gifted and talented, but maybe also have extraordinary anxiety, or perhaps are on the spectrum, or any struggle they may have, and that's a lot of added stress to their lives. And again, I'm not saying we shouldn't give access to that. It's to me, the extremes in either direction seem like a bad idea, but it's a factor, right?
I've got a lot of thoughts about this. At my previous school, when I was the director of technology, we talked about this because at that school, middle school started in fifth grade, which I think is too early. I think sixth grade is fine, but fifth should definitely be staying in elementary. So anyway, fifth graders, I think it was the first trimester, because we were on a trimester system, would not have grades, and they wouldn't have those turned on. And it was a good transition into middle school. But oh my word, do grade books and grades create a tremendous amount of stress. And I regularly, and this is at previous schools, current school, will hear students talking about grades, the grade book, their parents. It's it's sort of like, some things you touch a live wire and you're really aware of. When a kid has a zero, that is something that for most parents and most families that gets immediate attention. And to some extent that could be positive, but I really, really would love it if we would engage in a good, deep conversation, including multiple constituents, students, parents, staff, administrators, around this whole idea of whether or not it's a good thing that we provide 24/7 access to the great book. Because in the schools that I've been in for the last, decade, we do. And we've created a norm around it to the point where everyone expects it. And it's like part of a lot of parents, sort of their job is to go in there and make sure that nothing is too low. And if there is, they're going to get on their kid. And it's to the point where I've had a couple interactions with some individuals in the last week. We're about to do these conferences, and a couple are just opting out to not do it. And one of them said to me this week, well, my dad looks at my grades all the time. He doesn't need to come to a conference, and it's very unfortunate because the human side, being able to talk about how we're doing, reflecting on how we're doing, like there's a lot of value, but there's a lot of parents that absolutely just don't care. And they think they have everything they need with a grade. And I think it really devalues and dehumanizes the educational experience when it's reductionary and it's reduced to whatever this grade is, which frankly speaking, in many cases is a real subjective thing that can be put in the grade book. It depends upon the course and the teacher and the situation. But thank you for this article, because I'm not optimistic that in my current context I'll be a part of this conversation broadly with that constituency. But I think that's a fantastic topic, and it might even be something. I'm doing these monthly podcasts now for the Media Education Lab, and who knows, maybe that would be a good topic to talk about, because it's one of those things that I think, whether it's public, private, higher ed, secondary, I think this has become the norm. And just as we need to be looking at our own screen time and thinking about, oh, maybe like today, for mysterious reasons, which I won't further discuss, I just decided not to look at the news feed anymore today, or look at social media. I don't know why. I just decided, and it was actually quite lovely. And the kind of reflection that happens when we take a break or we take a fast from something, okay, that could be food or in this case technology, I think that's healthy. So it would take some institutional courage on the part of leadership to have that sort of that conversation. But I think that's great, and I'm excited that you shared that article, and I'm gonna read it and pursue that a little bit more, because that's something that I have lived and unfortunately seen the cost of with multiple students, and I just think it's not something we tend to reflect on and think about enough. So sometimes, folks, an article leads to a bit of a rant, and that may have been an example.
Yeah. But it is so important that we look at this more broadly, right? Like with all of the hubbub around the cell phones and classrooms debate in the last year, one of the things that I think is super interesting about this is that both Wes and I talk a lot. There is a lot of difference between good screen time and perhaps junk food screen time, right? And that's an important piece too. But there's no argument that having access to your assessment data is good screen time, right? But that also comes at a cost, right? Like in the same way that I'm a diabetic. I have a sensor on me at all times. It tells me what my blood sugar is. It is critical for life, right? Like that's a very important part of my health regime, so that I can know if I'm having a low blood sugar situation, which can be life threatening. But once in a while, my sensor expires and I don't have a new one. I have to go back to old fashioned finger pokes, and not knowing what my blood sugar is updated every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day, sometimes is a bit of a relief, right? And again, these are just such nuanced discussions, and I think we need to, we need to be clearly spending more time on it than we are right now.
I've read some articles, probably seen some videos about this assumption we seem to make in our capitalist society today that more choice and is always better, and it is overwhelming. If you go next time you're in Starbucks, ask the barista how many different drinks they're responsible for being able to make. I mean, I think it's hundreds and hundreds. And this is the world we live in, the world of choice. Go into a grocery store and, look at the frozen pizzas or whatever. But I think we also make a similar assumption that access to more data and faster access and more ubiquitous access is like going to be better. And I think that it's wise to question that. So
Yeah. And I'll just give one other quick example of this. It's why I like shopping at Trader Joe's, right? Trader Joe's, not only is it because it's relatively expensive and they have good food, but they don't have 14 different kinds of cashews. They have one kind of cashews. Now they have different flavors you can get. That's a whole different story. But because sometimes I'm in the mood for garlic and sometimes I'm in the mood for something a little sweeter.
and
Like
they're
maybe
really good. They limit it and they're great.
yeah, so I don't have to choose. And I have to say, Wes, I don't know if this is your experience either, but the older I get too, like I don't want to think about this stuff anymore.
There is a cognitive load that goes with this. We
Yeah.
saw that with my wife's mother as she developed dementia, and she could be frozen with choice. We could go into a 7-Eleven or a gas station to choose a drink, and she could be frozen with choice. So there really is a cognitive load. And that's something else that's just sort of in our environment all the
Right.
time. It's in the air, but it does really have an effect on us.
Well, and it's funny because I am designing a course right now with our team at Montana Digital Academy. It's an online world geography course. We're trying to really build just a wonderful, beautiful course, and we are heavily using AI to help us do that. But one of the things that I want to build into it, I think choice is really important for students, but I also think a lot of kids don't want to choose, right? And so one of the things that we're going to do as part of this is that let's say there's 4 or 5 case studies we want you to process and do something with. Pick one that you think is most interesting, but we're also going to have one that's literally blinking that says, don't want to choose this one, so that we give some
Give them an
guidance.
easy out. Yeah.
Yeah, because some students, that choice
We-
might actually be detrimental to their learning.
Yeah, and we condition kids for that too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, here is one of the older articles that ChatGPT, this is still in the social media, and this is the one I was just referencing. This is an AP article from June of 2024, so it's not in the last 2 weeks, but it's really good, and it's from the AP. It's called A Realistic Way to Protect Kids from Social Media, Find a Middle Ground. And so there's a lot of stories in this of different parents and different kids who have recognized that an outright ban can be not great for the development of kids, but also at the same time, not having any guardrails at all can also be bad as well. And it talks about the Surgeon General warning, I guess it was in May of 2023, saying there wasn't enough evidence to show social media is safe for kids, and urging policymakers to address those harms. But basically, it's a really good article arguing that parents need to be engaged and in the discussion and in the settings, and just simply handing kids a smartphone and saying have a great life is actually, I mean, they don't use these words, but that's it's not doing your job as a parent and a caregiver. So I thought that was good. I wasn't happy that ChatGPT was giving me a article from the summer because I was wanting recent ones, but I ended up reading it and then saying, when is this from? Oh, it's from June, but it's still good. So I'm glad to share that one.
There we go.
Okay, let's jump to some of the AI articles.
Yeah.
I thought this was okay. This is I'm gonna pick another one that I got from ChatGPT. This is was that the Pearson one? Workforce. The Irish Sun, not one of my regular reads. This is from today, November 6th, and it's called a headline: AI training for government workers, major part of smart tech plan amid clear economic opportunities despite job fears. And so they are recognizing, they being the leadership of Ireland, the government, that AI is, not just something we need to wring our hands about and worry about. It's something that we need to embrace. And so they have a new national AI strategy refresh that the cabinet in Ireland signed off on to promote the use of AI in Ireland and create jobs in the industry. And they are providing training to civil servants. And so 500 civil servants have already received this training. And it talks about using AI as a partner and the contention of leadership that AI presents many opportunities. Basically, this idea that we can partner with the AIs, and it's not just going to be stealing everyone's job. It may actually make us more efficient or open up new doors. I thought that was very innovative. And I think we could probably take some notes from what they're doing in Ireland. So that sounded very positive to me.
Yeah, very much so. I just because it does present a threat to the labor force, right, doesn't mean it's devoid of opportunities. But more importantly, that doesn't mean we should be shoving our heads in the sand about it either, right? Like making AI go away won't make it go away. But I would even go a step further to say that if and I've made this comment like a dozen times the last 2 weeks, but if we can adopt mundane AI, right, it can provide a lot of efficiencies, especially to knowledge workers. That's pretty extraordinary. Tim Cook has been quoted a couple of times now about how many hours a day that he feels like Apple Intelligence is saving him, and of course, he's a shill for for Apple, right? But he talks about something that I do differently, but still, it saves me a lot of time too. But he uses Apple Mail. In fact, I did put Apple Mail back on all my devices, even though I don't like Apple Mail very much because
Because of AI.
yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it there's a button on there that says, AI summary for the email. It will also attempt to guess um, uh, uh, if an email is a top priority email. And
That kind of thing is huge. And as we see that come into shoot,
oh,
my phone, sorry. If you'd like if you'd like to see the high-tech way that I hook my phone to my back of my computer, there you go. That happened the other day in a webinar too. I was like, okay, forgive me.
I needed that, Wes. So thank you.
Oh, good. See, if I can bring you a moment of levity on this fine November 6th day, then that's just great. What was
But
I even saying? Oh well,
it's those
there.
little things that really matter, right? And it's not like I don't want to read my email. In fact, I want to read the emails that bring me value, but opening up an email to determine whether it brings me value or not is 15 to 20 seconds. And
I'm so excited about that potential. Like that, I've had a real not happy relationship with email for many years.
yep.
And so quantity and being overwhelmed and all of that. So, and Gmail's already been good about, hey, this is a few years. Yeah, this is 3 years old. You want to finally now this is a few days old. This is last week. Do you want to reply? And I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Mhm.
But the more sophisticated that becomes because it knows me and it says, oh, well, this is somebody or this topic, oh, hey, somebody wants to bring you out to, have you come to a talk or something like that.
Well, and the way I put this today too is that I read something a couple of years ago that talked about that it's really common for executives not to like we're talking about like Fortune 500 CEOs not read their own email, right? That they just have someone whose job is to go through and constantly, determine what are the emails they need to read, and that's especially true. I get a lot of really good, especially AI news nowadays through newsletters. That seems to be where a lot of the energy and attention is around, and I probably subscribe. In fact, I'm just looking at my newsletter tab, which I just have trained Gmail to put them all under forums. But I've received probably 40 newsletters today, and I have no interest in reading 40 newsletters. But what the article I read talked about was that executives will oftentimes have all these subscriptions to stuff that goes to their email, but someone goes through and picks the 4 or 5 things that they really need to read. Well, if AI could do that for me, and I don't think it's all that far away to for that being the case, I think that would be pretty amazing. And in fact, right now, because I have a Gemini Pro through a Chromebook purchase, I received a year of Gemini Pro. There's a button on top of my Gmail that says "Ask Gemini," and I can have it summarize this email. So I just press that on a random newsletter that I opened up. It happens to be from the wonderful Stephen Bouchard newsletter about AI and education. And it provided 5 bullet points for me, so that I know if I want to read this more deeply. And one could argue that that's a way to not read it, right? but I want to spend my time deeply analyzing the stuff that's really worth my time. And, you know, information overload, been around since 84. And these are real tool sets that I think can help us around that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And filtering is key. So, being able to train your messages to do what you want. All right. Well, I think we did start just a few minutes after the top of the hour, so we could go for another 5 or 10 minutes. There's a whole bunch of model updates. Are there any particular ones? You've already talked about some of the Apple Intelligence stuff, but any of these others stand out to
Um,
you?
yeah, well, let's talk about the OpenAI search engine since you mentioned it, using it earlier, right, to try to grab articles. OpenAI now has, I think it's called Search GPT is the result. And for those of you that have heard about Perplexity AI, it's a lot like Perplexity AI. Perplexity AI is better right now in part because it has a lot more levers and dials and buttons that you can press on to more narrowly determine which sources go into the briefing as Perplexity creates it. But it's a pretty good start. The two concerns I have, the first one is that I'm assuming that it's a proprietary search engine, right? I don't think they're going out to Bing or to Google to search, so it's their own search engine. And it's not that hard to create a search engine. It's hard to create a good search engine, but the we've known how to make search engines for 25 years. That's nothing new. It's just a huge database of links. But we also don't know what a logarithmically goes into that. And also, I'm not entirely sure OpenAI can tell us because they really can't tell us how AI works, right? We've mentioned that a couple of dozen times on the show already that engineers will tell you that they like to think of AI as a big black box full of blinking lights, and they know that you can stick stuff in it and it output stuff that seems to be pretty accurate most of the time, but how it exactly works, they don't really know. But the second thing I would also say is that I do think that Google search, and I've been saying this for years, search is not or search is a critical thinking exercise, right? Because you have to go through and evaluate the sources to determine weaving together what is, and I'll put this in italics, true. And this is an example of something that if we're teaching people how to think and to critically think, that it makes no sense to just replace a search engine with something that is doing the searching for you. Now, what someone does with that already has established expertise is a bit of a different question, I think. But I think it's worthy of our time and consideration to think about what this does to the learning process.
Yeah, I think this is a huge topic for us to wrestle with as educators interested in search literacy, web literacy, media literacy, and it is going to touch everybody. But of course, Google is on the move as well as all the other major players. So it'll be interesting to see if there's any way that a player distinguishes themselves. Google was able to distinguish themselves so much through their algorithm, through their ability to put those good results first. And I just hope that we have some transparency and we don't have an opaque algorithm. Here's your answer. Just take my word for it. We need more than that. And so hopefully, and you wonder if government regulation is ever going to have anything to do with any of this. Oh man.
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
All right. Anything else you'd like to hit before we geek of the week hit?
Let's see here.
Ooh,
We didn't get a chance to talk about Anthropic's new thing. A couple interesting announcements around Anthropic last week. First, that there is now a Claude desktop app that you can download for both Mac OS and Windows. And I've installed said app, and so far, it looks just like if you made a web app out of Claude. So it's not like it's radically different, but it does allow you one button access, and I can't remember what the hotkey is to bring up a little dialog box on over your screen. That's super cool. It's something I probably would use relatively regularly, but the other thing that, and I can't remember if we talked about this a couple weeks ago or not, but there is a new feature where Claude can control your computer. and I believe it's called Computer Use. And I did download the demo. You have to plug in a Claude API key to get it to work, and essentially it downloads a virtual machine to your computer to demo. And on one side, you have kind of like a Linux desktop that's got Firefox and a couple of Office apps. I think it's Open Office Sheets is on there. There's also a drawing program and a text editor. And then on the left-hand side, there you can actually give it commands. So, open up Firefox, give me all the information you can about Wes Fryer, and it will do the Googling for you. And it's a little clumsy to start off with, but essentially what it does is that it takes a screenshot every 2 seconds, analyzes the screenshot, and then moves the cursor around to try to meet your command. And it's clunky and not super great yet, but it's really easy to see the potential for this. And
Taking screenshots every few seconds remind us of what Microsoft was going to do, right? As far as
yep,
the search. Hey, we'll
yeah.
just record your screen 24/7, and then you'll be able to have everything disclosed directly to the NSA, and we'll let you search your stuff.
Well, and what's funny about that, in fact, there's another article. This is from The Verge on October 31st that recall has been delayed again. In
Oh,
part,
that's what that was. That's right.
yeah. I presume in part because they're trying to lock down privacy pieces, but it is really interesting. The Claude did this, and everyone's like, "Whoa!" And Microsoft did something similar, and everyone went like, "No!" So, and I think part of that is that there's just not a lot of trust for Microsoft. But, I don't think we're that far away from a world where, and in fact, I saw this in a couple of demos on YouTube where I could ask it, here's my folder with all my travel receipts. Can you fill out a pre-trip, which is a process I have to go through at my day job when I travel, to get approval for travel, which is all good. Forms. It sucks to fill out forms, but we've got it down, pretty cleanly to start off with. But that's really cool if I can just give it, my receipts and say, do 80% of this in the background. And when you're ready, let me know, and I'll do the last 20% to make sure it's correct. And, really mind-numbing tasks like that. Again, I here, right? Like, I think we need to be careful about what we're automating, right? But I just have no problem with AI doing that stuff if we set some nice, legitimate side rails.
I assume you have memory turned on for your ChatGPT Pro account. Have you gone in to edit anything, delete anything in the memory that it has for you?
I have, and what's funny is that it seems a little better lately. But one of the reasons why I did exactly that is because it prescribed something to me that was actually like a scenario that I gave it. It wasn't about me; it was about an historical figure, or I was asking to analyze literature, or articles. And it is interesting what it picks up on.
Yeah, no, it is for sure. All right. Well, sadly, I think we should probably geek of the week and call it a night.
Yeah, especially since we both have a lot of them. Why don't you start, Dr. Fryer?
Okay. Well, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, and I finally pulled the trigger. You can all plan to come to Charlotte, North Carolina on Saturday, December 7th for PodCamp CLT. I have not started my Facebook advertising campaign yet, and I need to be putting signs up this weekend in local coffee shops. But this is going to be a podcast conference, basically focused on both podcast consuming, listening, as well as podcast producing. And it's going to be very ed campy, bar camp, teach meet esque, as far as lots of folks, hopefully, whoever's in the room sharing their expertise and their knowledge. I did a little video for a lovely Zoom that I did for Dean Sharesky's students in Canada, and it was called Classroom Management Digital Tips for Middle School Teachers, but you can check that out for 17 minutes. And then yeah, I just did. I already talked about ChatGPT. There's the conversation for tonight's show. So it was a moderate success to use the live search, and it'll keep on getting better. I'm pretty sure this is the worst version that it's had yet, and I probably should do the same thing with Perplexity, and I have not done that yet. So anyway, those are That's my overshare for Geeks of the Week. How about you, Dr. Neiffer?
Yeah, I have three things I want to share. First, I need another tech project. Like I need an open festering wound, but I am working on developing a home automation server just to play with technology. I need something that's not AI to play around with. But what I've been researching is multi-platform home servers so that
Nice.
all my stuff can be controlled by one server. And I'm also looking to be very honest, to maybe create a Pi-hole server is what it's called. It's an ad blocking software. Just because with Chrome getting rid of some of the ad blocking technologies, surfing has become somewhat out of control. But that's a a whole different story. Go ahead.
That could also be functioning off when your power or like internet goes down, or potentially outside internet.
Yeah, I think so.
Right,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal.
And so excited about that. And so the one that I've been looking at right now is something referred to as Home Assistant. It's an open source project that does all sorts of different things. And so I'm excited about that. But I'm also happy to announce two things. First, I'm going to be offering a webinar on Tuesday, November 19th on Notebook LM. It's co-sponsored by Montana Digital Academy, the Schools Administrators of Montana, our administrator group in Montana, the Phyllis J. Washington College of Education at the University of Montana, and also the Northwest Council for Computer Education, to give a shout out to all the organizations that I work with. But I'm going to be giving a 1-hour webinar on how to set up, master the basics, and real-world application for teachers and educators and students even, for Notebook LM. And I really felt like that particular platform is a really great gateway tool to kind of wrapping your brain around what AI can do. And I've already created probably 50 notebooks that are all pretty amazing and useful, that are there. So it's a free webinar. You can sign up. It is 4:30 Mountain Time, which means that for folks in the Central and Eastern Coast time, that's maybe your dinner hour. You may or may not, but I will definitely post an archive of that. But you can sign up to join live at the link shared there. And I'm also really happy to announce that Montana Digital Academy and the University of Montana will be offering our very first AI play date. And I see that I have put the wrong link in.
But I found it. Yeah, I got the event right. Is that what it is? Yeah, I'll drop.
Say it again.
Is it Eventbrite? You got the Eventbrite
It
registration?
is, yeah, but
Yep.
also AIPlaydate.org is the
Really nice.
so
Good for
playing
you.
off the wonderful model the Jeannie Majira and the folks in Chicago started a decade ago. We're going to do an AI playdate. This is a face-to-face version. Dr. Fryer has done AI playdates online before, but we're going to open up the beautiful Alley Auditorium in the College of Education, the University of Montana, for 3 hours in December, and invite anyone to come hang out and play with AI. So AIplaydate.org is the location of that information.
That is fantastic.
Yep. Well, Dr. Fryer, our hours come to an end. Where can people find you on the internet?
I am hiding at wesfryer.com, and you can go to wesfryer.com/after for more social links than you probably want. How about you?
I'm at aicentrist.com, and I may actually refurbish that page to just be two things: how to contact me, and then something that Dr. Fryer had suggested to me, just a current list of what AI tools I find interesting, because that's a question I get more often than not. So, hey, this is the EdTech Situation where we appreciate you either listening to us live or downloading our podcast wherever finer podcasts are aggregated. All the apps have EdTech Situation Room, or on YouTube. You can find us there as well. And also Facebook, as it turns out, has an archive of our episodes as well. If you can't join us live, listening to it after the fact is more than awesome. We hope you have a wonderful week. Stay safe, stay stabby, and we'll see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Good night.